Tonight we're going to cover guidance on the rented homes for fitness for human habitation for Wales Regulation 2022. And after a false start when we're going to bring them in earlier this year, we're going to go through the process and the information of the regulations and what it means. And we will take the questions at the end, and you could ask the questions from your buttons on the right hand side of the screen. You could add the questions in there, then we'll go through the questions at the end of the presentation. So keep hold of any questions you have, and we'll try and answer them all at the end. So, what do the FFH8 regulations require? Under the Renting for Homes Fitness for Human Habitation Wales Regulation 2022, they are coming into force on the 1st of December for all new tenancies. And landlords must ensure a dwelling is in good repair and is fit for human habitation. And the regulations do introduce new legal requirements for landlords in both social and private rented residential properties that have to adhere to these regulations. So the background of the FFH8 regulations. So Part 4 of the Rented Homes for Wales Act 2016 sets out the obligations that landlords have to conform to with regards to the condition of a dwelling they are renting. And the obligation applied to all occupation contracts made for a term of less than 7 years. And the landlord has to ensure the dwelling is both in repair and it's fit for human habitation, and that's where the FFH8 comes into it. And they must satisfy the requirements for the dwelling to be fit for human habitation, and it's important the landlord also understands the complementary obligations regarding the repair of dwellings to make sure it is fit for human habitation. Once the primary cause of a dwelling being unfit for human habitation, it's the level of that disrepair that exists within the property. And tackling any disrepair early and effectively can prevent the dwelling becoming unfit for human habitation, and that saves the landlord problems with that aspect if you take early repairs on any problems they have in the dwelling. So the landlord's obligation to keep the dwelling in repair. It's Section 92 of the Act sets out the obligation the landlord has to perform to keep the dwelling in good repair. An obligation extends to a range of items, including the supply of water, gas, and electricity, for sanitation, and for space heating or for heating water. And the landlord must keep the dwelling in repair at all times, although there may be instances where the landlord may not have knowledge of the need for repair within a particular dwelling. If the landlord's not been informed of the problem, he would be unable to carry out repairs. And the repairs must be carried out in a reasonable time and to a reasonable standard, including the obligation to make good any damage resulting from any repairs that have been carried out. The landlord cannot place any obligation on the contract holder regarding any of the repairs. The example of that is contributing to the cost of the repair when it is not the fault of the contract holder for the repair to be carried out. And the landlord's obligation to ensure the dwelling is fit for human habitation. Section 91 of the Act places an obligation on a landlord to ensure that at the start and during the length of an occupation contract, the dwelling is fit for human habitation. These obligations are set out in the Renting Homes Fitness for Human Habitation Wales Regulation 2022, and this sets out the 29 matters and circumstances to which regard must be had when determining whether the property is fit for human habitation. And this is just an extract of the guidance for that. In addition to this, the specific requirements placed on the landlord to ensure that certain matters and circumstances do not arise. And the aim of the legislation and the Act and FFH regulations is one of prevention. And Part 1 addresses each of the 29 matters and circumstances. Part 2 deals with the specific requirements placed on the landlord as part of FFH regulations, and to ensure some of the 29 matters and circumstances do not arise during any tenancy contract. So the Housing and Health Safety Rating System Wales Regulation 2006. The Housing and Health Rating System prescribes a hazard associated with the risk of harm. A local authority will assess a dwelling by reference to these matters and circumstances, and classes of harm also specified in the HSRS regulation to identify where Category 1 or Category 2 hazard exists. However, whether the dwelling, whether or not a hazard is set out in the Schedule 1 of the HSRS regulations exists, does not predetermine whether the dwelling is unfit for human habitation, according to the FFHH regulations. Just an extract of the regulations itself. So the 29 matters and circumstances. I'll go through all of them, but we're going to concentrate on the ones that are affected by FFHH regulations. But we're going to look at the damp and mould. 2 is cold, 3 is heat, 4 is asbestos and MFH. 5 is biocides. 6 is carbon monoxide fuel combustion, and that is covered under the FFH regulations. 7 is lead. 8 is radiation. 9 is uncombusted fuel gas. 10 is volatile organic compounds. 11 is crowding in space. 12 is entry by intruders. 13 is lighting, and as lighting is under electrical systems, that comes into it as well. Got 14 is noise. 15 is domestic hygiene, pests and refuse. 16 is food and safety. 17 is personal hygiene. 18 is water supply. 19 is falls associated with baths. 20 is falling on surfaces. 21 is falling on stairs. 22 is falling between levels. 23 is electrical hazards. 24 is fire. And 25 is flames, hot surfaces. 26 is collision and entrapment. 27 is explosions. 28 is positions and operability of amenities. 29 is structural collapse and fallen elements. So we'll start on item number 6. So carbon monoxide, fuel and combustion. These are all linked to the partial combustion of gas, oil or solid fuels for heating or cooking in dwellings. It contains nitrous oxide and sulfur dioxide. The causes are incomplete and improper combustion of fuel or blockages or other defects in the flue for these appliances. Creates carbon monoxide in dwellings, and it's an incomplete combustion of those fuels. And it is affected by open fires, boilers, solid fuel fires, oil burning fires, and they must have a carbon monoxide detector in these cases. So that's the way the landlord takes the actions to carry out the precautions for carbon monoxide is by having alarms installed in the dwellings and making sure they're tested and they have regular maintenance. With number 13, we're looking at lighting. And this includes threats to physical and mental health associated with inadequate and natural artificial light. The potential landlord actions is artificial lighting should be positioned to provide sufficient light to enable domestic and recreational activities to be carried out without eye strain, without creating glare or shadows. Artificial light is particularly important where domestic tasks require adequate light, for example in a kitchen over worktops, sinks and cookers. And during the periodic inspection and testing, which the PIT stands for, is issues such as poor lighting would not necessarily be highlighted or recorded as a defect as an electrical safety issue, but the landlord may consider any such implications that have been identified on the safety report. And a landlord could request an inspector to record any poor lighting issues that would assist the landlord in identifying any issues with the Rent Homes legislation. And this is just an example of poor lighting at a cooker point, and this could end up with problems with the tenant not being able to access and safely use the cooking equipment in the premises. So it's something that needs to be considered. Look at 23 for electrical hazards. Now, these include hazards relating to shock and burns and resulting from exposure to electricity, but not risk associated with fire caused by deficiencies in the electrical installation by ignition caused by short circuit, for example. The potential landlord actions is electrical wiring of the installation should meet the latest requirements of the Institute of Electrical Engineering and Technology, or the British standard, which is referred to as the BS 7671, and it is often available in local reference libraries. You can purchase a copy of this book, but it's for any electrical contractor to use as what they install electrical installations to. There must have an adequate number of appropriately sited socket outlets, and this prevents extensive leads, things like that. Appropriately sited fuses and meters. Adequately earthed electrical systems. Installation of supply meters, fuses, wiring, sockets, light fittings and switches to be maintained in good repair. And electrical installations to avoid close proximity to water, including areas of damp. And where any lightning protection systems are installed, to be kept in good repair. Look at number 24 for fire. This includes threats from accidental as opposed to arson, uncontrolled fire and associated smoke related to those fire instances. So the causes are the occupier's reaction to discover a fire, can possibly influencing the escape from fire, but factors can, because of fire, can include source of ignition from cooking appliances, space heaters, electrical equipment. Solid fuel as the main fuel leads to higher likelihood of fire through with lower fatality rates from gas and electric space heaters. Electrical distribution equipment in poor condition. Natural harm influenced by the presence and absence of automatic fire detection and alarm systems. And the stats we had in Wales was 62% of the accidental dwelling fires in Wales had an electrical origin. That's part of the stats we had for there. And 5, potential landlord's actions. Safe siting of cookers away from flammable materials. Properly designated, installed, serviced and maintained space heating. Sufficient and appropriate sited electric socket outlets. Properly installed and maintained, regularly checked and tested distribution board and wiring. Residual current devices, fire and smoke permeable resistant materials in the design of the building wherever possible. Fire stops to cavities, including ventilation and heating systems. The design and construction of the building to limit the spread of fire and smoke. Properly constructed and fitted internal doors with self-closers. Furniture to comply with the current regulations, and currently the furniture and fissions fire and safety regulation 1998. Detectors and smoke alarms properly designed and sited, maintained and regularly tested. And the means of escape for all parts of the dwelling, building, opening doors, windows, protected staircases depend on the height of the building. In part 2, the landlord's requirements, they must consider all the 22 matters and circumstances listed under part 1. And this is regard to be had when determining whether the dwelling is fit for human habitation. In addition to the fitness for human habitation regulations, they place specific requirements on the landlord to help to prevent certain matters and circumstances arising. As we talked about, prevention is better than having to carry out the repairs. So where a landlord fails to comply with these requirements, the dwelling is to be treated as if it was unfit for human habitation. And the 3 requirements imposed on the landlord are ensuring that the presence of smoke alarms in proper working order, the presence of carbon monoxide detectors in proper working order, and inspection and testing of the electrical installation. Smoke alarms. The presence of smoke alarms is intended to reduce the risk of fire and associated smoke and any consequent injury or loss of life. Without the smoke alarm being fitted, the occupier is at least 4 times more likely to die in the event of a fire. So the FFH8 regulations require a smoke alarm in proper working order to be present on every storey of a dwelling. The landlords must ensure that these smoke alarms are in proper working order, connected to the electrical supply, and interlinked with all other smoke alarms connected to the electrical supply within the property. To ensure this requirement is met, the opportunity to test the smoke alarms should be sought whilst carrying out the necessary repair of electrical testing on the dwelling. And depending on the size of the dwelling, landlords may consider it appropriate to ensure there's more than one smoke alarm present on each storey of the property. It's just an example of different in a multi-dwelling block where they've got lots of different smoke detectors, heat detectors, things like that. And the landlords may also consider it appropriate to fit an additional heat alarm in the kitchen area. And smoke alarms should be sited where they can be heard by the occupier when sleeping, and that is usually in the hall or landing area in each of the levels of the storey of the dwelling. Once the minimum requirements of the regulations have been met, the landlord may install additional smoke alarms which are battery powered, tamper-proof style preferred. So this is not the replaceable battery, it's a battery that can't be tampered with and removed. The FFH regulations do not require these additional battery powered lamps to be interlinked. The fire service does provide guidance on the type of lamps available in the fitting. In addition, BS 5839 Part 6, which is the British standard for fire alarms in dwellings, sets out the requirements of proper fitting of smoke alarms in domestic properties. A contractor specialising in the fitting of smoke alarms should be able to advise any landlord on the standard and what has to be done to fit the smoke alarms correctly. There is some guidance from the fire services in the North Wales Fire and Rescue Service. They could advertise how you get a free smoke alarm. To request of home safety visits, the South Wales and Fire Rescue Service provide that service, and Mid and West Wales Fire and Rescue Service also provide that service. And the landlord must note the manufacturer's recommended lifespan of a fire alarm, which will depend on the alarm being fitted. An alarm which has passed its expiry date may not be fully operational and incapable of detecting smoke in the operation of a fire in the dwelling. A dwelling which is subject to an occupation contract, which is converted from an existing contract on the date of implementation, may not be required to install a smoke alarm for the period up to 12 months from the date of the conversion. And with this, the exemption will no longer apply if the dwelling from a converted contract ends. So if the new tenancy starts, the requirements of the FFH regulations will apply on new tenancy. Carbon monoxide alarms. Carbon monoxide is a gas. It's produced by any carbon-based fuel which is burnt without enough oxygen. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, but it can injure and it can kill quickly. Not only is it responsible for a considerable number of deaths and poison each year, many people are likely to be affected by carbon monoxide poisoning without realising it. And obviously you've got different types of fuel burning appliances which can emit the carbon monoxide. The combustion appliances such as boilers, gas and open fires, heaters and stoves fueled by solid fuel, oil or gas all have the potential to cause carbon monoxide poisoning if they're poorly installed, poorly maintained or incorrectly used. Particularly where there's inadequate or lack of proper ventilation, flues and chimneys. The FFH regulations require landlords to ensure that carbon monoxide alarm is present in any room which has a gas, oil or solid fuel burning appliance installed. Carbon monoxide alarms are essential in providing perhaps only warning to an occupier the presence of carbon monoxide in the dwelling. Carbon monoxide is a silent killer, and almost every fatality results from a lack of early warning to its presence. Additional information on the causes and effects of carbon monoxide can be found on the Public Health Wales website. And placement of the carbon monoxide alarms should be considered carefully. Smoke alarms, because of heat and smoke rise, are normally placed on the ceiling. It's not necessarily the same place to install carbon monoxide detectors. The concentration of carbon monoxide reaches dangerous levels before reaching the ceiling height. As a general guide, the carbon monoxide alarms are usually installed lower than smoke alarms. And the guidance accompanying carbon monoxide alarms should also be followed carefully, including note the expiry date of the alarm, the carbon monoxide alarm. And carbon monoxide sensors are usually more fragile than those within smoke alarms and need to be replaced more regularly. So regular checks on this need to be carried out. The requirement for the landlord to ensure that smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms are present under these regulations do not replace any duties placed on the landlord under existing legislation, including the Management of Houses in Multiple Occupation Wales Regulation 2006 and the Gas Safety Installation Use Regulations 1998. Inspection and testing of electrical installations. Although fires in the home are reducing overall, the proportion of domestic fires caused by electricity is steadily increasing. Anything receiving constant use will deteriorate over time, and the electrical installations are no different to that. The electrical installation within a rented accommodation is likely to be subject to greater levels of deterioration because of the regular changes of occupancy. Therefore, they should be inspected and tested regularly to ensure the electrical installation is safe for continued use. This test is known as a periodic inspection and testing, and abbreviated to PIT within the regulations. The PIT is carried out on the wiring and the fixed electrical equipment to check that they are safe, and the test will reveal if any of your electrical circuits or equipment are overloaded, find any potential electric shock or fire risks, identify any defective electrical work, highlight any lack of earthing or bonding. The periodic inspection must be carried out only by a qualified person such as a registered electrician. An electrician must be competent to carry out a PIT in accordance with the UK standard, the Safety for Electrical Installations BS 7671 requirements for electrical installations, also known as the IET1 regulations. Further information on finding a qualified electrician could be found at Find an Electrician on the Registered Competent Person Electrical, and it will highlight who these people are. And you can also find the Registered Electrician on the Electrical Safety First website. Now, this is just an example of how you find it from the Registered Competent Person Electrical Person website. And what it does is it's linked to government and industry guidance on the way of finding competent and qualified electrical installers and electrical inspectors. And on the side, it shows you under NAPIT side, it'll show that who's registered under NAPIT side and other organisations. And what you do is select your postcode, select what you want, whether people to carry out remedial work or to carry out an electrical safety report. And this is just an example of a video on this just shows you type your postcode in here. So you type your postcode, select your postcode, then search for an inspector or contractor, and you see in here it's listed down the points, and I'll list down the available contractors within that area. I'll highlight who the contractor is, who the contact number is, who they're registered with, and you can be aware they are registered on the scheme and checked that they are suitable for carrying out any inspections or remedial work on that side of it. Once the PIT has been completed, so the periodic inspection and testing has been completed, you'll be issued with an electrical installation condition report. And EICR is the abbreviation we use within the electrical industry for that. The report will inform you of any deterioration, any defects, dangerous conditions, or any non-compliances with the present-day safety standard that may give rise to danger. If no issues are found, the EICR will confirm the electrical installation is satisfactory for continued use. A landlord is required to have the electrical installation of the dwelling tested at least every 5 years, unless the requirements of the previous electrical installation condition report indicate a shorter testing interval is required. And where shorter intervals is recommended, the 5-year period will not apply, and future tests must be undertaken at the recommended interval. Failure to do so will mean the dwelling could be considered unfit for human habitation. The current EICR must be made available to the contract holder within 7 days of the occupation date. So what is a periodic inspection test? For the fitness for human habitation regulations, this is an electrical inspection test and it must be carried out in accordance with BS 7671 2018. Now we have we've gone through different versions of the regulations. Currently, is the brown version is in is the current edition. Previously, it was the blue edition. And within those BS 7671, we have a regulation 653-1 that states, after the completion of the periodic inspection testing of an electrical installation condition report based on the model form in Appendix 6 shall be produced. And EICR is the report used to record the inspection, testing and any observations with the results carried out during the assessment of the safety of the existing electrical installation within any property, and it's used to describe its condition. And the purpose of an EICR is to confirm, as far as reasonably practicable, whether it's possible for the electrical installation to be considered safe for continued service. An EICR BS 7671 2018 states that the documentation from the initial certification or previous periodic inspection testing shall be taken into account. So this is just an example of a previous EICR. And different versions of the forms. Within each installation, they may have details on the documentation which will assist any proposed electrical safety check. Without such previous documentation, there may be further investigation that needs to be undertaken prior to any inspection testing being carried out. And what we find within the EICR, we've got observation codes. And there's 4 main ones. We've got C1, which is danger present, risk of injury, and immediate remedial actions required to remove that danger. And that results in an unsatisfactory report. The C2 is potentially dangerous, it's urgent remedial action required, and again that results in unsatisfactory. We have a C3, which is an improvement recommended, and if any C3s appear on the EICR, that will be satisfactory. Then we have a 4th one, which is FI, which is for further investigation required without delay, and again that results in an unsatisfactory EICR. One of the areas that was being widely debated on this FFH regulations is that the requirements is based on meeting the current edition of BS 7671. And this is currently the 18th edition of the WAR regulations published by the IET and BSI jointly, and BS 7671 2018, and it's currently amendment to 2022, which is a brown edition. And because those regulations are referred to, it led to the incorrect assumption that electrical installation must comply with the current version of the regulations. The inspections carried out to the current edition of the regulations, but just because an installation has been installed to a previous edition doesn't mean to say there's any problem with that installation. We're checking the installation to make sure it's safe for continued use. And where a pit is carried out after occupation date, the EICR must provide it to the contract holder within 7 days of that inspection date. In addition, a landlord is required to provide the contract holder with written confirmation of all investigatory and remedial work carried out on the electrical installation as a result of the periodic inspection and testing. This written confirmation must be provided to the contract holder within 7 days of the occupation date. Where investigatory and remedial work is carried out after the occupation date, written confirmation must be provided within 7 days of the landlord receiving his confirmation. A dwelling which is subject to an occupation contract which is converted from an existing contract on the date of implementation, 1st of December 2022, it will not be subject to the requirements of the periodic inspection testing for a period of 12 months from the date of the conversion, and that will be, I need to have a periodic inspection testing carried out from the 1st of December 2023. This exemption will no longer apply to the dwelling should the converted contract end, and it will require the landlord to meet all the requirements of the FFH regulations for any new occupation contract. So the obligation of the landlord, they must ensure the periodic inspection testing is carried out at least every 5 years. Must ensure smoke alarms are installed, are in proper working order and properly repaired. And where fossil fuel appliances are installed, must ensure carbon monoxide alarms are installed, are in proper working order and are properly repaired. Just an important reminder of the time frames. So the FFH regulations are coming into force from the 1st of December, from tomorrow. Periodic inspection testing must be carried out at least every 5 years. Existing contracts, the periodic inspection testing, smoke alarms and carbon monoxides are 12 months from now and will take effect. And to provide the contract holder with an EICR, periodic inspection testing, got 7 days to provide that to them. There's one thing that was it came up during the previous webinars we did about the when the regulations were going to be brought in on the 15th of July this year. That there was another set of regulations that come out, the smoke and carbon monoxide alarms amendment regulation 2022, which were introduced in October. They do not apply to Wales, and the FFH regulations will be the regulations that apply to Wales with regard to smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. So that this though mentioned in the regulations England and Wales, it does only take effect in England, and the FFH regulations will take precedence in Wales. One thing we had was frequently asked questions, and one of them we had was what is the stance with regards to full investigation if an EICR is satisfactory, if the FI full investigation is flagged, or would that too potentially not meet the FFH requirements? And further investigation is still unsatisfactory, would not be fit for human habitation on that side of it. B, with regards to C1, C2, that's the observations I highlighted. Now, the C1 was dangerous and potentially dangerous. So the what's raised for an existing contract holder, and we have no previous EICR because under FFH regulations, a contract holder thinks of property is not FFH, but they could always hold the rent. The guidelines do not specify a time parameter when the landlord needs to get the work done. With the existing contract holder, the landlord has 12 months to comply with FFH regulations, unless that contract ends, and under SRS is required to ensure no electrical hazards exist within the property. As there are no timeframes to have the work completed when an EICR is unsatisfactory, the property must be deemed as not meet the FFH requirements. One thing, it was an electrical installation certificate cannot be accepted under any circumstances. This is anomaly with the PRS regulations in England, where an EIC, the electrical installation certificate, is treated as having a 5-year lifespan like the EICR, and it's eventually replaced with the EICR 5 years from that time. If the EICR electrical installation certificates are not accepted under circumstances, has the Welsh Government reached out to the Building Federation to instruct them to issue an EICR as well as an EIC when there's a new build. The revised guidance for the FFHH require an EICR, and an EIC is accepted as the purity inspection testing for new build dwellings only. And this does differ from the PRS regulations in England. The EIC is valid for all new works.